Yes, thank you, Tom. It's a very good information. And there are some questions. So let me see. The first question they asked is, so what is the essential or minimum equipment you carry to villages for value-added products?
The very bare bones essential. Well, what we
Yes.
did in 2013, I came to the village with one thing, a melanger that cost $500. Okay, it was in my suitcase. The drum bent because you know how airlines like to throw suitcases around. But we just bent it back into shape, and that was it. So we roasted the beans over the fire. So I have a picture of David roasting the beans over the fire. So we didn't buy a roaster. Just had a big old pot that they normally made stew in. Roasted the beans, dry roasted the beans, and then had a bunch of volunteers cracking the beans open and peeling them by hand, and rewarded the volunteers with a piece of chocolate they'd never had before. So that was good. And then we cracked that, broke that up and into nibs, which is very easy to do. And then ran the first batches. We used margarine because in order to get, this is a little funny, in a country that produces 40% of the world's cocoa beans, you cannot buy cocoa butter. It's only recently women are starting to use it in their hair, and now you can buy it. But and nobody uses it for making chocolate because nobody makes chocolate. So you had to buy it in Abidjan, the big city, and you had to buy a $250 block in order to, that was the minimum price. So we used margarine, just a little bit of margarine, and made a perfectly decent chocolate. It was a little oily because, you know, margarine doesn't have the melting point profile of cocoa butter, but it was a perfectly decent product. You could use coconut oil. The problem with coconut oil is that coconut oil chocolates are very greasy. So they melt right away in your hands. That's very annoying. I find it, although it's very nice when it melts right away in your mouth. So you have to refrigerate coconut oil chocolates. Yeah, so there's another fat that you could use. Yeah, anyway, so it was just a $500. That's your entry level, and you can make, I think, out of, say, if it's 3 kilos for the smallest machine. Does that sound about right? 3 kilos capacity for the smallest
It's
machine.
like four,
Four
four and a
kilos.
half,
All right, so
four and a half total. Yeah.
4.5. So if you're doing a 30-gram bar, which I think is good for the country, not so great for the city, because city people want 100-gram bars, but country people can't afford 100-gram bars. So country people, it's good for the 30-gram bar. So you can make in 4 kilos, say, that's 4 times 30. That's 120 bars at, if you're selling them at say $1 each, which would probably be, for Ivory Coast, would be very expensive. But in the city, you can sell it for that. Yeah, you can make $120 out of one batch with, say, 3.5 kilos of beans at $1 a kilo. So that's $3.50, and you sold it for 120. So you take off, say, $5 from 120. So you make $115 for one batch. I'd say in most businesses, they would kill for that. That kind of a, what do you call that, return on investment is like 4 weeks, you know. You just make 4 batches and you've made 100% ROI, return on investment. So, you know, it's got great promise. You know, when I managed to get into the country without paying duty. You know, in Ivory Coast, often duty is 100%. So if you bring in an $8,000 machine, you have to pay $8,000 to the customs. And that was a $500 machine. But I told them, I'm helping cocoa farmers. This is the first chocolate that any of them have ever made. Do you want to stand in the way of progress for your own country? And so, and then I gave them a t-shirt, and then they were happy, and they didn't charge me.
That's a good way.
Yeah. T-shirts go a long way, by the way. The t-shirts are really goodwill.
Yeah. And then some, Steve has said that the Amelinado, amylom means melon. So it's like melon-like.
Oh yeah, because it's fat and bulbous. Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah. And then he's also asking, how are the peeled cocoa beans produced?
Sorry?
How are the peeled cocoa beans produced? And he had a follow-up question on that. He said, once it's peeled, it's hard to transport. So how are you transporting? So you said the peeled cocoa beans, like you peel the cocoa beans and make it into candied beans. So he wants more information on the process.
Okay, so it's a delicate balance. Okay. So in order to peel a bean, you have to get the moisture level of the bean down far enough to roast, so you don't, but on the other hand, if you get too dry, then it falls apart. So you have to knock them when you roast the bean, and also when you buy the bean, you do not want to buy really dry beans because you can't peel them. So you have to, because they'll just fall apart. So you have to buy a little bit, like, I don't know, 6 to 8% is the standard dryness that they're looking for. So you don't want more than 8% because they tend to mold. And if you get much below 6%, they tend to fall apart, which is fine if you're making chocolate, but it's not so fine even then, because the drier the bean, the more, when you crack and winnow it, the more you lose to dust. When you're winnowing it, a lot of dust goes out. So you lose like sometimes up to 10% of the weight of the bean by using a bean that's too dry. So don't dry it too much, and then it will ship just fine. I've brought bags of it in my suitcase and did not break. And I don't really have a problem with that as long as you don't use beans that are too dry.
Okay. And also the candied process. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the candied process again?
Yeah, it's just say you have 3 kilos of beans, then weigh out 3 kilos of sugar and 3 kilos of water, and put the 3 kilos of sugar and the 3 kilos of water in a big pan and bring it to a boil. And once it comes to a boil, add the beans and then just boil that. And believe it or not, it doesn't, you don't lose, there's some falling apart, but you can actually, when I bag them up, I add some of the broken ones too, because they're still good food. And if you want to, you could sell them separately as for salads, because they're very good in salad. A little sweetness and crunchiness in a salad is a good thing. But anyway, yeah, and then you just boil it down until the sugar crystallizes. And so you stir it, don't just walk away from it. So you boil it down and you stir it periodically. And then as you get closer and closer to the end point, stir more and more. And then you'll see at one point that it's crystallizing. You can just turn the heat off and just take the wooden spoon and scrape the bottom and stir really well, so that it doesn't so that they don't clump. If they clump, then you have to break them apart, and you want to do that while they're still hot. So that means I work fast. I don't use gloves. You can use gloves, but you don't want you to burn yourself. So it's going to be hot. But if you're a cook, I was a cook for much of my life, and I was always handling hot things. But yeah, I just wear gloves. But you do not want to let it cool down you want to keep stirring it so that it doesn't clump up. And then once it's cool, then you can toss it in a big bowl and throw in some chocolate and stir it real well, and then throw in cocoa powder, stir that real well and add cocoa powder until they separate from each other. So you're always trying to keep them from clumping. And then the spice, add the spice with the cocoa powder. So if it's powdered ginger, add it with the cocoa powder. If it's powdered cardamom, add that with the cocoa powder. And of course, you can add, you don't have to add powdered cardamom. You can use the bits of cardamom. That's nice too.
Okay. Yeah, I think some people, if the raising hand, Dr. Nisav is raising the hand. So anybody wants to ask their question themselves instead of I asking their questions in the chat. We can promote them to talk. So let me see if I can make Dr. Ogata talk, so he can ask the question.
Well, yeah, somebody asked you to recommend a solar power system. So I, at one time, I was interested in bringing solar power to a village. So I was teaching at a university at the time, and the university had gotten 1,000 solar panels as a gift. And I thought, hey, maybe I could get 40 of those and I could figure out how to send them over there in a container. And so then I went to an engineer to ask him, okay, how much is it going to cost me for all the stuff that hooking up? So assuming I get the solar panels free, how much is it going to cost me? And at that time, it was about $40,000. That doesn't include renting a container for $10,000 and then getting it to the village after that. So, do I recommend it? No, because it's not cost effective. I recommend solar power, say drying beans. Use the sun's natural light to dry beans. Like in South America, Central America, Dominican Republic, they make these hoop structures. And then they have these tables, and they have a giant fan at one end. And then you just let sun come through, and then you could run the fan off of solar power, and then it wouldn't be so expensive because you wouldn't even need batteries, or you'd have minimal batteries. So then that would be a solar power system that's cost effective. But anytime you get into like roasting, forget it. That is absolutely not. It's not economically feasible. But if you want to run a fan, even running water pumps, that huge amounts of electricity. So unless you can find a sugar daddy, somebody who's going to donate a lot of money, then that's fine. Nothing wrong with that, but you have to find a sugar daddy. And I'll tell you, after living 73 years, I have yet to find one. So I'm looking for a sugar daddy every day because I want to help the cocoa farmers as much as I possibly can. So I sure could use a few sugar daddies, but they have not come out of the woodwork yet. Maybe they're not in the woodwork. I'm looking in the wrong place. Anyway, yeah, I do recommend solar if you're going to do something modest with it, drying, just natural dry. I made a dryer. And I ran the fan off of solar, and then I discovered that in Africa, they have these insects called termites. And the next year when I went there, my solar dryer was a pile of sawdust. And the chief had taken the fan and put it in his house and run it, put the solar panel up on the roof, and he used it to cool his house. But it didn't last long because the termites destroyed my research. So anyway.
Dr. Ogata, we've invited you. We've, allowed you to, yeah, you're there. We can see you, and welcome.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to congratulate Dr. News for his very, very good effort. I think this is the way that you describe, very, very, very straightforward, of how to add values to the production of cacao. As basically, as President Akufo-Addo a couple of years ago said, that Ghana will not be able to go further in development unless they stop selling just raw materials, and they have to add and sell chocolate bars as you are doing. And your effort is really, really very a very good example of how to go to adding values. However, I would like to know if you can explain us a little bit how are things going in terms of clearing the tropical rainforests, especially in Ghana, where at least 10%, 7,000 square kilometers were cut in the last 10 years. And protected areas have been cleared for cacao, because cacao is grown at sun, and that clears out all the diversity. The same thing in Ivory Coast, where the emblem, the elephant, is endangered because of the setting of new plantations of cacao.
I know.
And the other thing, well, that's in one question. And the other one is, how are you doing with the ways people organize in the cooperatives in order to share the profits? Because that is another big problem, where people will not get away from poverty unless they change the values looking for, not the accumulation of wealth or the privilege for some 2 or 3 people, but unless people look at themselves for the welfare of the community. We have been working with that in Equatorial Guinea, where we are proposing things like we have been doing in Mexico, which is looking for other values within the community, like self-sufficiency, that is to be self-sufficient in food by means of solidarity efforts, using diversified agroforestry systems in the shade, not at sun, for cacao production, so that we can have a sustainable development in the environment. So you have been working there, I really would like to know your opinion about these 2 issues that are the backbone of the chocolate production.
Yeah, in a very short answer, the shortest answer, and then a little bit more details after that. The shortest answer is, I've been doing this since 2003. I've listened to people who are experts in forestry. I've read lots of stuff. And it is frustrating as hell to watch human beings around the world ruin their planet, whether they are in Africa, North America, Asia, wherever Homo sapiens is, they ruin their environment. And it is just so frustrating to see people do things that are obviously not in their interest in the long term, just so some people can get rich fast. And it just frustrates me so much to see that. And I'll give you an example. Al Jazeera, not any Western media, Al Jazeera did a very good program on Western Ivory Coast about 2 years ago.
I saw it.
And basically they took forests that have been set aside in perpetuity, never to be damaged. And they took slaves from Mali and Burkina Faso, and they paid them nothing and promised them a bicycle after 5 years, which of course they would never get. And then they girdled all these 250-foot trees, 100 meter, 90-meter high trees, and killed them. And then they took everything out underneath and put cocoa in. And then and I won't mention the company because it's the largest egg company in the world. If you want to look,
Everybody knows.
Everybody knows Cargill. Okay, so Cargill was selling it fair trade. They were selling those beans fair trade, and the fair trade organization did not even watch that. And so they were selling slave-produced, forest ruining chocolate. And you know why they do? Why they take virgin forest? It's because they get 20 years, 10 to 20 years of very good soil. After that, the soil is garbage. And they get 20 years and then they leave it and let it turn into grassland, and it'll take 1,000 years to come back because they don't lift the finger to do anything. And yeah, it's so deeply frustrating. In Cameroon, I went to visit the Congo Basin, just on the edge, the eastern edge of Cameroon, or southern edge of Cameroon. And the best road in all of Cameroon is the road that the World Bank built. So the World Bank was part of this terrible thing. They built the nicest road. You didn't ruin your kidneys driving on all the other roads in Cameroon. You will lose your kidneys if you drive on them. This one road is totally smooth. And then they have these mammoth trucks with all these trees from the Congo. And then they 2 square kilometers of land with 100 feet high trunks stacked up, ready to go ship. And here I live in France. Every door and every window is made out of African wood. None of it comes from Europe. Nobody in Europe uses European wood. Only the Swedes. The Swedes have that fact, I forget the name of the company where they sell wood that's encased in plastic, and they just use 10-foot high trees because that's all they've got in Sweden. But otherwise, the Europeans use all African wood. Yeah, it's very bad. The situation is very bad. Our politicians are doing nothing. It is really upsetting. And so I just feel like, okay, I'm 73. I want my grandchildren to inherit a planet. I'm going to do everything I can with my remaining years to try to do something to help. And I totally agree with you on everything you said.
And about what about the organization of the people?
Yeah. So that's also a big problem for us. We're just getting started in that. You know, we're trying to partner with some people who have much more experience than we have, how to really get people to do the right thing, and because the village, the traditional model is that the village chief gets everything. I was in a village in Ghana, and there was a big truck, and they were pulling one of the giant trees, and I asked somebody in the village, who did that tree belong to? And they said, all trees belong to the chief. The chief, they bring it through and they knock all our cocoa down when they drag it through. They just drag it right through our farm, knock it down, don't pay us for it. And because it's the chief owns everything, has all the power. Yeah, so how do you deal with that kind of a situation? Yeah.
I will share with you some information.
Yeah, so I mean, I want to it's very complex. All of this is very complex. If I wanted to live a happy life, without too much trouble, but still do good, I would just bring gifts. For 10 years, I was bringing gifts to cocoa farmers because I wanted to learn from them, and I just brought gifts. So I would spend every trip, I would go visit like 5 villages, and I spent $2,000 on tools and bring the tools, and brought gifts. You cannot do anything wrong with that. If you start to do what we're doing, where we're trying to do a cooperative and we're trying to keep it equitable, and and then all of a sudden we deal with one of the worst traits of the human being, which is something called politics. And all of a sudden you're dealing with the most upsetting and disheartening kinds of situations because people don't treat each other very well. And that's hard. That's really hard.
Congratulations for your work. I think you are doing very well.
Thank you. Well, I don't know if I'm doing really well, but I'm trying to. It's always a work in progress. It's never finished. That the Greeks had it right. I forget the guy's name, but the guy who pushed the stone up the hill and the stone kept rolling back onto him. That's how you feel when you do something like this. I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, thank you.
Okay, next Jenkins wants to talk. So Jenkins, you have been allowed to talk. Hello.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Tom, for the time you've taken to give us this wonderful information. As you guys can see, I'm a young chocolatepreneur, cocoa farmer based out in Liberia. I live in the United States currently, in Gaithersburg, Maryland. But basically, we started this journey. We're trying to start a cooperative. We have about 30 acres of cocoa right now on our farm. We're just trying to put everything together step by step. One of the hardest things is bringing the facilities into Liberia because for us, a lot of the villages that we're working with, the lack of education, the lack of information, all that stuff. So we're trying to find the best way to introduce this process to everyone. And I was curious, you mentioned something about a 28-year-old that you were working with, that you did a WhatsApp call with, that you taught him the techniques and all that. So I wanted to know, is it possible, Tom, for you to be able to do similar things for us in Liberia?
Oh, your volume is going. I'm sorry, Jenkins, we cannot hear you very well. Can you talk a little bit louder, please?
So I was curious. You said that. Should I start over?
No, we got all that. It sounds much better now.
So I was curious. You said you spoke to a 28-year-old that you were helping online with WhatsApp and teaching techniques with. I wanted to know if you offered those same services to everyone, and if you can offer those services to us in Liberia as well, because as you know, Liberia is very young when it comes to the chocolate industry. We only produce 0.02% of cocoa globally. So we're trying to get into the market. We're trying to get into this competition. But I'm new to this, and I live all the way in the United States. My father is actually the project manager that's been helping us keep everything together. So I'm excited, but I'm also scared, like the gentleman was saying, about all these different obstacles that we have to face, all these different techniques that we have to go through. So how can we work with you guys, Ando, Cocoa Town, all of you guys, to be able to start this process the right way? Because the foundation is the most important part.
Yeah. I'm quite happy to talk to you. If it gets more complicated, I'll have to run it by my board, but I'd be glad to help you get started and share with you the kinds of things that I've done and what worked and what didn't work, and so I'll be glad to.
Okay, when the time is right, I'd like to set up. I saw your contact information. I'd like to connect with you and Ando, because I've been working with a guy named Scott, and he introduced me to Ando's company, Cocoa Town. And so I'd like to send an email to the two of you, Ando and Tom, to see how we can coordinate together, because I'd like to use the equipment from Cocoa Town, as well as the expertise from you, Tom, in terms of making our own ingredients. We have a lot of produce on the farm. When you talk about candied pineapple, candied oranges, all of those things we already grow on the farm as well, because we're trying to do the sustainable method. So we grow a lot of produce in between our cocoa farm. And so we're able to use those products into our ingredients. So it would be very exciting. And I'm looking forward to talking to you to see how we can use this produce to actually enhance our product.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I've done a bunch of PDFs that show how to make how to candy orange peel, how to candy pineapple, ginger, Basically, I showed Servando, who's the guy in Pezoin, how to candy orange. And then I said, just do the same thing for, and so he did the same thing. And he figured, he came up with his own stuff, which is great. And he just sent me 2 kilos of candied orange peel and 2 kilos of candied ginger by mail to my house here, so that I have to make a 300 bars of each orange peel and ginger for the Salon du Chocolat. So I wanted him, because he doesn't manufacture chocolate, I wanted him to contribute the candied fruit. And anyway, so I'd be glad to help to work with you on that.
Last question. So we want to start a facility with the equipment from Cocoa Town. How big do you recommend the actual building facility is? 500 square feet, 1,000 square feet? What do you think?
Oh, you guys do stuff in feet, huh? Let's see.
Well, I'm in America, so
I know. I'm just kidding. I live in France, so I've tried to undo my feet awareness. But anyway, if you're going to start with a small thing, okay, so like in Ivory Coast, if you say you build a building that's I don't know, 200 square feet, that would be a pretty small building. It might cost $1,000. Okay, so in Ivory Coast, they make all the cement blocks right there. They don't. And then they I watched the whole process. And then you build a building. It might cost $1,000 to $2,000 for maybe 200 square feet, maybe more. You have to put metal roofing on. The wood's cheap because it's local. But anyway, I don't know. You can ask somebody to price it out for you. But I mean, 200 square feet is like 10 feet by 20 feet, or 15 feet by 14 feet by 14 feet. So that would be you can do something in a space like that. So I mean, if you want to be very modest and start small, start with a small thing, and then plan on incorporating it into the next thing. So David, who did the DEPA project, he built it out of a mud, so he made a typical Ivorian mud hut, but he did put metal on the roof. I don't know what it cost him. He put a concrete floor, but eventually he replaced it. He basically hardly used any concrete blocks. Those are expensive. So and the way they do concrete in Ivory Coast, they don't it's not like the US where you pour concrete, it's like 4 to 6 inches deep. Okay. No, they put dirt, pack it down, and then they put 1/2 inch of cement on it and smooth that real well. And eventually it cracks and falls apart, but it'll last a few years. So that's how they do it cheap. So they don't have to, so they can keep down the cost of starting the business. Yeah.
So lastly, thank you very much, Tom, for working with the villages, because my company right now is currently in a village called Segbe Town in Liberia. So we're trying to do the same thing that you're doing, and we're very happy that we got to talk to you today. Well,
write to me. I'd love to, find out more and get pictures, and it sounds wonderful. I'm really happy.
Yeah, I'll have an Instagram page. I'll send it to you.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Do we have anybody else? Is there any chance to?
Yeah, there are more questions. Sita has asked a lot of questions. I'm not sure if she wants to.
Oh, Sita Sealy. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think I have the candy. Oh, I do have one on candy pineapple. Yeah, I do. Yeah, it's basically the same as orange peel. but I believe I did do one on candy pineapple. I just have to look it up. Yeah.
Okay. And Balu wants to ask a question, so he can
Okay.
ask now. Yeah, you can ask. We cannot hear you. You are on mute. You have to unmute.
Mute. Okay. Tom, can you hear me now?
Yes. Hi.
That's a fabulous job. See,
Thank you.
you are one of the CEOs who has a great team of people and not sit in an office and then just move the papers. You really go down to the ground level, hold the farmer's hand, and then work with them. I mean, on the lower level. That's a great attribute to have. You are getting old, 74 years. You said 74 years old?
73.
73. So what is your plan to have a successor for you? No, that's really, it's hard to get somebody like you, but you need to have, because this is a great job. The rest of the Africa is waiting to follow you. You need to have somebody you should grow.
Well, you're going to meet my successor. Well, in a way, he'll replace part of me. His name is Jean-Joel Yao. He's going to be, I'm trying to get his visa together. And so he's going to join me in Paris. So you'll get to meet him. And
Okay.
he speaks fluent English and French, so he's great for the translation. And he is very personable and never gets angry. I mean, he has all the right qualities. It's really
Okay.
good.
Okay. Yeah, glad to meet you again in Paris. Yeah.
Yes, looking forward
Thank
to
you.
it. Thank you. Okay, so
And I'll back to you.
Okay, let's see. There are some
somebody
more.
says, at what temperature do you chill the chocolate?
There you go.
Okay. Okay, so it's all about tempering, so there's lots of tempering videos, but basically I work with chocolate at between 31 and 32 degrees centigrade. Okay, so that's what I work with it at. Usually I will chill it down if depends upon the chocolate. So the chocolate that I work with is real easy to temper. Now, some chocolate is just the devil to temper. And so if you're working with difficult chocolate, you have to use more extreme conditions. So I generally chill it down to 29 centigrade Celsius and work with it and then warm it back up to 32. I try not to go over 32 on hot days. I'll work with it closer to 31. On cold days, I'll work with it closer to 32. I will chill it down to 29 so that I get the shiniest possible chocolate. So I find that chilling it down enough gives me the crystal mix that gives me the shine. If you've ever been to on YouTube, there's 100 videos put out by this fabulous chocolate manufacturer in Hawaii. Now, what is his name? Oh God. It is so good. It's CCTV, Craft Chocolate TV, CCTV. And he has the best videos and he's so fun too. But anyway, he talks about all this stuff. He let me translate like 30 of his videos and I gave them to the farmers in Ivory Coast on a little stick drive. And they were real happy because, information is power. And if somebody else can help you avoid making a whole lot of mistakes, that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's the Dylan Butterbaugh.
I'm sorry?
His name is
Dylan Butterbaugh.
Butterbaugh.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
his brothers.
They make
really good videos. Yeah, they're really good. Yeah.
And then
So,
somebody
one of the
is
things he talks about, he loves ball mills. He's always talking about ball mills. But he's in a different business. Now, when you're in the village, ball mills would come later. You're going to be in the mélangeur business for a while. And actually, I like mélangeur chocolate because it has body to it. It has texture. To me, ball mill chocolate is great It's very smooth. It's melt in the mouth, no doubt about it. But I do like a chocolate that has a little bit of a bite to it. You know, that's not perfectly smooth. And that's what I prefer. And what we sell, that's what we sell. We're not in the ball mill business at this point, and probably won't be, because I'm just thinking about villages. I'm not thinking about, you know, large scale manufacturer in cities. But anyway, he's a great resource. Can I have some more info on making candied citrus, ginger, etc.? Yeah, so I can send you guys some of the videos, or you can just write to me. Just write to me, and I'll be glad to send you the copies. What is the brand of the press from China? Okay, I'll find that out. Just brand of press. Yeah.
You know, Tom, you can also find it later and send it, and we can send it when we send the recorded video.
Okay.
We can send the answers for the questions.
Okay, so I'm
And
putting
then,
in, yeah, and then the candying.
so you can re-email it to us, and then we can send it as an email
Okay.
or when we send the recorded video. And then somebody is asking, is Cocoa Town, you know, going to make the cocoa butter press? But that's for Balu. He already raised his hand. So I think Balu wants to say something else.
For the cocoa butter press, the answer is yes, you are working on something. But the smaller scale one, there are several Amazon ones available. You can buy it from Amazon, or if you can buy it from China. But the larger one, if you are by taking one and then modifying it to making it suitable for cocoa butter press, I would see it maybe in 6 months. It'll be ready. Going back to this tempering question, somebody asked about the tempering. People should look at the seeding method. You know, not everybody should go and buy an expensive tempering machine unless you have a large volume production where it's an automated, the dosing and the vibrating table and all that. That should not, having not enough money should not be a deterrent for tempering. You should look
Right.
at the seeding method. So warming the chocolate to a certain temperature and adding crystals, voila, you got a tempered chocolate. It's very suitable for small scale craft chocolate manufacturers. You should look into it.
I don't even have a tempering machine here in Cord. I do everything by seeding. I
Yeah.
don't even
Okay,
do
okay.
tabling. The French love tabling. They smear it out on the table and
Mhm.
around. I don't even do that. I just use seeding.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe you should say something about that. What do you do, Tom, for the seeding?
Yeah, another PDF. It's basically I take chocolate that's solid. So once you have chocolate that's solid, it could be ugly. It could be ugly, 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 and I'll still use it because it has the capability of seeding the chocolate. So you're basically, by seeding, that means that the heat of the melted chocolate is separating the crystals, and that the crystals that melt at the higher temperatures are retained, and then you stir those around, and then that's called seeding. Okay, and it's the same whether you seed butter from a cow or you seed margarine fats. It's all the same technique, which is basically to add some of the solid fat and stir it around and stir it and getting it down to like 29 Celsius and back up, or if it's not working right, even lower than 29. But generally that's what it is. And if they want to write to me, they can ask me because I've been seeding chocolate for 20 years, so I'm a little used to it. Okay, let's see what else is there.
Steve, one more question that I can see is, can you share an Excel sheet or other type of spreadsheet to calculate the cost of chocolate, where you can put in estimates or historical data in order to calculate or estimate cost and project selling price?
Woo! Yeah,
Love
that's That's where somebody else on our board is the expert on that and is working on developing forms for them to fill out. And yeah, we're still working on that. I'm pretty much a fly by the seat of my pants guy, and when it comes to finances, I know if you spend more than you make, you are going to be out of business soon. So I know that. For example, the guy in Pezoan, he was selling little discs, and he was selling them for 45 CFAs per disc. And I told him that barely he pays for it. So this is real basic finance, so you can go a long way with just real basic stuff. If it costs you more to make it than you're getting, you're in trouble. So at least you should be double. In the United States, it's way more than triple, because in the US or in France, the cost of labor is so high. But in, say, Cote d'Ivoire or West Africa, the cost of labor is like $2 a day and not $20 an hour. And so then the formula would be quite different than what you'd use in Europe or the United States. But generally, if you're selling it at the same prices you paid for the ingredients, you are going to lose money fast. So I told him, you should be selling them for at least 90, so not 45, but 90 CFAs per disc, because it's just not going to. So then if it doesn't sell, then you have to figure out what products can I make that require a lot less, labor and, so like maybe it won't be bars. Maybe it would be those the beans that are boiled in the sugar syrup, and you can make 100 kilos if you had the big enough equipment at a time, and you can really and you don't have to worry about tempering, because all you do is boil the beans until the sugar crystallizes, separate them out real well, and then let it cool, and then mix it with chocolate, mix it real well, then throw in cocoa powder and mix it real well, break it all apart. And it doesn't have to shine because it's covered in cocoa powder. And then, so you have a product that you can make a whole lot in a very short period of time, and you'll actually make money doing it. So a lot of it is just selecting the right item. With bars, I don't recommend big 100-gram bars for people in the country. They'll never be able to afford it. Small bars like a 30-gram bar, maybe, yes, especially like middle-class people can afford, a little bit higher prices in the country. But yeah, you have to think about all that, yeah.
Okay, well, we reached the top of the hour.
Oh, it's 6 o'clock. Yeah.
Yes, Mrs. Balin, you want to come in? Anything you want to add, or
Yeah.
see
Yeah,
any
I
questions that we
just
missed?
only thing is, like, they asked about what's the cost of the electricity and what is the solar powered ones. Did they try? And I think already Tom covered it in the webinar, so I didn't ask that question.
Yes, he did talk about that.
Then Sita said she's part of the Women in Chocolate Cocoa group in the Trinidad. So Trinidad is also encouraging farmers to make their own chocolate. That's good to know.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. No, I spent a long time in Ghana, and I actually started a whole chocolate factory between Cape Coast and Kakum National Park in a village, but it all fell apart because of politics, because the chiefs couldn't get along. And there were like 4 villages and they couldn't get along, and it all fell apart. And I spent like $15,000 on the project, and it became to nothing. And it was a great idea because all those tourists go from the slave castle in Cape Coast, and then they go to Kakum, which is like 50 miles away. And on the way, there's this village that could be selling chocolate from the local producers. And I left them with it all ready to go, turnkey operation, but they couldn't get along. Nobody would take responsibility. And when you don't have any, the structure, the governmental structure in place, you could do all the smart things and it won't do any good. So yeah, I learned that the hard way.
Also the traffic is so slow in that area. People just sell a lot of stuff on the streets, all these beans
Yeah.
and everything that you said. That they can sell it as a snack for the passerbys and then make money. But
Yeah.
like you said, it's right that
And there's more
it's not
money in that
happening.
area in Ghana because it's got tons of tourist dollars coming into the whole economy. So there's a lot, the level of business is much higher. It's a great place, but I decided I'm just going to focus on Ivory Coast because one country's enough. And I figured, and I saw a lot of young people, especially a lot of young women in Accra doing some really wonderful things. So I figured, those guys they're doing the right thing, so I'll let them do it. So I just decided to go to Ivory Coast and do it. So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I think, if nobody else has any questions, so we can end this webinar. So I just want to thank everyone for your time on a Saturday. I know it's a holiday. Most of them want to spend with the family, but you took time to, stay with us and then make this webinar a success. And Tom, thank you for sharing all your insights, and it will motivate a lot more people to replicate your model in other countries to help their farmers in their countries. That's going to be, this is like that, what they call the grassroots level change. It's not,
Yes,
top
right.
down, it's bottom up. So that's more important. It's got start at the bottom of the pyramid to go up the pyramid.
Yes.
So thank you for your time. So
Okay.
thank you all for joining. So
Thank you.
please let's know your comments. Take few minutes to review us, and that will be helpful. And then if you're visiting Paris, and we will also be in Porto Chocolate Festival in Porto, Portugal. In 2.5 weeks. So we will see you there. And then anybody interested in the Bean to Bar workshop, we have the Bean to Bar workshop in India. It's happening October 24, 24 to 25, 26, 3 days, and then the farm visit. So thank you all, and have a great day, rest of the week. And Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu.
Yeah. Okay. Bye-bye. Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye.